This is GTA 5 running natively on my phone. There's no cloud streaming, no weird tricks, just the full game running straight up on Android. And yes, it's actually playable. PC emulation on phones have come a long way, and there are tons of great PC games you can run on Android right now. But I discovered a problem. There's genuinely no good guide or instructions on how to set this up. So I wanted this to be the definitive guide to getting everything working. I'm covering everything from hardware to emulators to actually getting the games running. Let me show you what I learned and how to get started so you can go run GTA and a bunch of other games on your phone. So we're gonna be running some beefy games, so we're gonna need a beefy phone. I'm using the REDMAGIC 10 Pro. This phone is a monster in terms of specs. REDMAGIC was kind enough to send me a phone to test these things on, since this phone has something really special in it that I need to be able to play games at this level. Something that only a handful of the phones on the market have right now. They also sponsored this video, so big thanks to them for that. Okay, so let's go over the specs real quick so you can get an idea of what we're working with here. This is the Lightspeed version, so this is their base model. But even then, this thing still packs 12 gigs of RAM, which is minimum of what you're gonna wanna do for PC emulation, 256 gigs of storage, and a 144 Hz AMOLED display that can go up to 2000 nits of peak brightness. I mean, look at this thing. This thing is like 95% screen. And if you wanna go overkill, they also make a maxed out model with 24 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage. That's almost 2 whole Call of Duty games. Oh, and don't even worry about battery life, because this thing has a 7050 milliamp battery with 100-watt fast charging, so this thing lasts forever, even when pushing it in games. In between tests, I would leave it plugged in while I go like transfer my camera footage over to my computer. And by the time I came back, the battery already had like an extra 40%. It's insane. Oh, and it has this little AI assistant named Mora. She's cute, but I still honestly can't believe this is stock.
I feel full of energy.
She's a whole part of the phone and she's integrated into everything. Though thankfully you can turn this off if you want.
Wake up, Commander. It's time to get up and finish your mission.
Yeah, the Gooner phone is crazy. Anyways, now just because they sponsored this video doesn't mean they're gonna get away from criticism. No. I like a lot of things about this phone. This might honestly just be the perfect Android phone if I'm being honest, but I'd feel bad if I didn't do my due diligence. The front camera, it looks like something out of my iPhone 4. If cameras are a deal breaker to you, maybe this phone isn't for you. But for everything else, yeah, dude, you're gonna be really happy with this phone. Now, all of this is great, but the most important thing for what we're doing is the chip inside. This isn't just kind of important. I'm not just chilling here. It's essential for what we're doing here today. Now remember this name. This phone has the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip in here, which is important because number one, Snapdragon chips seem to have the smoothest experience when it comes to running PC games on here. But number two, this thing is a beast. It's rocking an 8-core CPU with an Adreno 830 GPU, which means this thing is not only fast, it's also super efficient. It just sips battery. At peak load, this thing can clock all the way up to 4.3 gigahertz, making it more powerful than even some gaming laptops right now. It's a good thing that this phone has a straight up fan in it to keep it cool. What this translates to in real life is Android games, yeah, no matter what you play, it's gonna completely max it out. And it's not even gonna be trying.
Fortnite.
With everything maxed out, hits the internal game's frame rate cap of 90 FPS. And that's just on balance mode. The fan doesn't even need to be turned on to hit this. And even on battery saving mode, it still gets a rock hard 60 frames. Like, this thing isn't even getting hot. COD Warzone, same thing. On the Rise setting, which is like the proper gaming mode, it's over 100 FPS with everything maxed out, and it's super wide FOV. But everyone on YouTube does benchmarks on Android games, so what I thought would be really cool is, let's test this chip on something that's really heavy, PC emulation. Now, if there's one thing I want you to keep in mind, even if you have a really powerful phone like this, PC emulation is still really complex. This is gonna be hard. Some games will just not run, and your phone is gonna get hot. But I still wanted to make this video anyways because unfortunately the documentation for this topic is just really bad. But I do plan to do something about that, which I'll tell you about later. Okay, so how do we start? Well, there's two main big options that you can use to run PC games. One of them is called Gamehub, but I'll be honest, it's a little sketchy because it asks for things like your mic and location access, and the compatibility is really bad. I would feel weird recommending that to you, so the one that I'm gonna be focusing on is called Winlator. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering, okay, this just feels like a lot of work. Why not just run it on a Switch emulator? Since a lot of these PC games are also on Switch too. And there's a few reasons why I think Winlator is still better in this aspect. First, it's a lot easier to rip PC games from your existing PC library than it is to rip a Switch cart. And given all the hoops you have to jump through to actually rip your games, it's kind of cheaper too, honestly. And second, since they're actual PC games, that means they have PC settings. So if you're not happy with the performance or the visuals, you can turn them up, turn them down, or what I like to do is some games have ultra wide support that can actually take advantage of this really pretty screen on my phone. instead of having those weird black bars on the side of my screen. Big difference, right? Now here's the catch. Because of the way that main Winlator works right now, at the time of recording this video, just installing Steam directly onto Winlator and downloading games doesn't work. You can't use Steam on here. Now there are options like the Rare app, which basically lets you access and download your Epic Games library right from Winlator. But aside from that, your best bet is honestly going to be DRM-free copies of games, which are just versions of the games that don't need any sort of internet connection to run. It's just a plain old exe with all the files included, so you can run them completely offline. There's a few places where you can get these, the most popular being GOG.com, where their entire business model is DRM-free games. They give you a little exe installer, take that wherever you want, and it'll install the game anywhere, no questions asked. And odds are you already have some DRM-free games right now. If you have Amazon Prime, they have this thing called Prime Gaming, where every month they just give out GOG keys for free to keep forever. And they're really good games too, not just the cheapo free games either. This month they were giving out BioShock Infinite, Talos Principle, Outer Worlds, and in the past they've given out stuff like Mafia, Borderlands, Killing Floor, and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, it's crazy how a lot of people don't know about this and they've had Prime for years. Now, again, you do need Amazon Prime to claim these keys, but honestly, what I see a lot of people do is just sign up for the free trial, claim the keys, and then just cancel. It's really not a big deal. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go claim the keys. Also, if you ever bought Humble Bundles in the past, check your account. Some of the games that you've claimed, in addition to the Steam key that you bought, also came with a DRM-free installer of the game. If you sort games by Windows, it'll show you a list of all of your games with DRM-free copies. This page is kind of hidden, honestly, so I get why most people haven't seen this before. I'll leave the exact link in the description that should take you to your account to go check. And lastly, some games, if you have to, can have their DRM removed so you can run it on your phone. So if needed, you can remove the DRM from your game files. So all the games that I'm showing you off here, I tried 100% my best to purchase and obtain legally, but sometimes I just had to strip the DRM to get it to play, which sucks because a lot of these games are single player anyways, so I don't know. Okay, so to recap, you need DRM-free copies of the games. You can get those from GOG, Humble Bundle, and even some Steam games. Last case resort, strip the DRM. You got that? Okay, so where do we start with Winlator? Now, there's a bunch of different versions of Winlator that other people have made. Some might work better depending on what phone you may have, but I'm just gonna be covering basic, plain, normal Winlator. And if you're not happy with the compatibility or the performance that you're getting, you can go seek out other options. But I find that most people will probably be okay with just normal Winlator. And while some stuff can apply to other types of phones and chips, most of my focus is gonna be working with Snapdragon chips only, because they're in a lot of common phones and even some handhelds that you might be familiar with, like the Retroid Pocket 5, but they also just seem to have the most straightforward experience with Winlator. Now, I've seen this conversation already play out in a bunch of different Reddit and Discord threads about how actually you can get pretty decent performance on a Mali chip or a Dimensity chip as long as you run this modded version of Winlator and run this script to tweak your phone and have a literal AC unit taped to the back of your phone so it doesn't catch on fire. I'm not interested in that. I'm sorry. But feel free to tinker around and research your phone and see if people can get stuff running on it. But for now, I'm just focusing on Snapdragon chips for simplicity. Okay, so on our phone, we're gonna grab the Winlator APK, and we're also gonna download something called IJ's Prefix, which has a bunch of different installers that we might need to actually run the games. If you ever installed a PC game before and it tells you, oh wait, no, you have to install the .NET framework or anything else before you can run the game, that's basically what these are. This will install most of the ones that you'll need to get up and running. Okay, and we install Winlator. Now let's open it up. Now the first time you load in, you're gonna need to make something called a container, which is basically like the fake PC that we're gonna be running all of our games on. You can hit the plus sign up here to make one. Now there's gonna be a lot of options here, but don't worry, I'll try and read you through these one by one the best as I can. Name is name. Screen size is the resolution of the PC. By default, it's set to 720p, and if that's all your phone can handle, that's completely fine. But odds are you're gonna wanna scale it to a size that can actually fill your entire phone screen. Here's a few common aspect ratios to help you out. Mine is 21:9, so I'm gonna do 1600 by 720. That's basically 720p, but with extra pixels on both sides. Okay, next is drivers. Oh man, okay, I've been thinking on forever on how to explain this, mostly because trying to get info on what these things mean is incredibly dense if you're not familiar with these terms. So you end up getting sentences like, oh, Vortic isn't actually a native driver. It's more like VirGL, but with Vulkan. It's very similar to VirTrio Venus, but the only difference what I can see is Vortic is made by Bruno, whereas VirTrio Venus is already a Mesa driver. Like, Are you speaking Spanish? I don't know what that means. Does that get me more frames on Goose Game or not? So here's my simple explanation, and people in the comments can correct me and fill in the blanks. So the driver is like the fake GPU that your fake PC is running. The driver is like a translation layer that converts PC code into phone code so it can run as optimally as possible. Now, for almost all Snapdragon phones and handhelds, you can use the turnip drivers and just be done with it. These are native drivers that were built specifically for Snapdragon chips, and it should give you the best possible experience. However, the processor in the phone that we're using right now is pretty new. It's like really, really new. So there's no turnip drivers for this phone just yet. And from what people in the scene tell me, we likely won't see any turnip drivers anytime soon, apparently. Don't worry, I'll explain why later. So the developer of Winlator, people call him Bruno, made a translation wrapper type thing that is a universal fit to kind of try to get the most out of your phone's built-in drivers. It's called Vortec. Best way I could put it is, if Turnip is like the custom remote for your super expensive TV, Vortec is the universal remote that you can get off of Amazon. It's designed to work with more TVs, just maybe not as well as a proper remote. Well, the funny thing is, I tested this because I have the REDMAGIC 9S that came out last year. This is the fastest chip that still has proper native Turnip drivers. And even then, this phone still beats it out in performance by like a good 20 to 30 frames through just sheer brute force. And like, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad experience. 30 FPS on a phone is still incredible, but the not ideal solution is still incredibly powerful, don't worry. Anyways, if you have any Snapdragon device that isn't running a Snapdragon Elite 8, pick the Turnip drivers. There's no need for you to use any Vortec drivers. But since the chip in this phone is still really new, we gotta pick Vortec. All right, DX wrapper, or the DirectX wrapper. Just leaving it on DXVK will work for most, but if something doesn't run properly, odds are changing this might help. Also, there are different versions of DXVK, and the newest update might not actually be the best pick for whatever game you're trying to run. It's really, really weird. So if a game doesn't run, I'd run over here to fiddle with this setting and see if that gets it working. Oh, and set your GPU to something modern. Some games will have issues if your fake GPU is too old. RTX 3070 is just fine, honestly. Audio driver is fine at ALSA, but some games will have issues with it. Switching it to pulse audio can sometimes fix it. Okay, you can realistically leave everything else the same here. Now, you don't have to touch it right now, but I at least want you to be aware of this tab, environment variables. Sometimes a single game will need a specific tweak to get it running or get it fixed properly. Usually you can just Google the game that you want plus Winlator or whatever, and they'll give you what you have to add in here. It's rare, but sometimes you do gotta know how to add in tweaks, and it's good that you're learning right now where to do it. Proud of you, by the way, good job. Okay, over to the advanced settings tab and set your box preset to performance. If the games don't launch or happen to be crashing, dialing this back to compatibility can sometimes fix it. Actually, matter of fact, just start at compatibility, and if a game runs well, move it up a bit to performance, okay? Oh yeah, and some games work better or worse depending on the amount of CPUs. You can just leave it as default, but it's good to know in case you might deal with a really messy game. All right, now we're ready to go. Now, mind you can sit here and tweak endlessly with all of this stuff, but at the minimum, this setup should at least let you launch games. Let's create the container and launch it. And this is your desktop. It's really bare bones, I know. First thing you're gonna see is a file explorer. You can use your finger to drag around the mouse cursor and then just tap to click on something. And then double tap to double click, you get the idea. Okay, I'm gonna switch over to screen recording here because otherwise it's gonna get really hard to see. Okay, first thing we should get running is our dependencies. Remember those installers that we talked about earlier? Yeah, those. Okay, so your D drive is gonna be your downloads folder on your phone. If you download something or drag something into your downloads folder from a PC, it's gonna show up here. And no, unfortunately, there's no way to use external storage or flash drives or anything to extend this, sadly. There's ajprefix.exe right there, so let's double tap to open it. Cool. Okay, let's restart our container. And when we boot it back up and hit the little start menu in the corner, we should see a whole bunch of new options. And look, access to any installer you might need. Now, most likely you don't need all of these to run your games, and installing them one by one is gonna take forever. So we can hit this bat file right here, and it'll install most of the installers you'll ever need just automatically. Once that's done, you're all ready to go. See, a lot of this stuff is really straightforward and simple, but it's just really hard to explain it properly. Okay, so how do we actually get games on here? Well, remember the D drive is just the downloads folder. So if you already have a GOG installer from your game, you can just open that in here and install the game. Though I will say that does take up quite a bit of space since you need room for both the installer and the actual game itself. So sometimes it's just not ideal. So what I would suggest is if you have a computer, install the game there, just how you normally would. And once it's installed, you go to your directory, grab the folder where the exe is and all the base data files, and then just transfer that entire thing over to your downloads folder on your phone. Then when you launch it up in Winlator, you launch the exe and it should just work. But digging through folders to launch each game is kind of annoying. So what you can do is right-click on the exe and hit Create Shortcut. Not only will that make a shortcut on your desktop in case anything happens, but now when you leave Winlator, you can go to the Shortcuts tab and just launch your games from there. Having shortcuts also means you can make custom configurations for each specific game if you like. So if there's one game that has a bug or doesn't launch with your proper settings, you can test different stuff here so it doesn't have to mess up the rest of your games. So I'll show you an example. Running Bomb Rush Cyberpunk at stock won't launch the game. I gotta set my box preset to compatibility mode. But once I do that, I can hit play and the game launches like normal. It's really convenient, right? And that's pretty much it. Like I said, you can configure and tweak stuff here as long as you want, but this is at the very least enough to get you started. Just remember, expect a lot of tweaking and configuring. Some games might run great, and some games will just not work at all. That's just the nature of PC emulation right now. If you're not sure about a game, I would suggest just Googling the game you're trying to run, plus your phone, and then see how well others have managed to get it running. Sometimes you can get some insight on how other people manage to run the game properly. Okay, so I'm gonna go over the games that I tested on this, start light, and then gradually start making the games more and more intense. So of course, stuff like Cuphead worked great. Only thing is, some games like this don't have ultra-wide support, and since most phones have a wider aspect ratio than most monitors, for example, this phone has a 20:9 aspect ratio, you end up with these black bars on the side, which sucks.
I'm over it, whatever.
But on games that do have ultra-wide support, you get this awesome experience that completely fills up the screen. At 1600 by 720, games like Ori and Will of the Wisps look so pretty, especially since this is running at over 80 FPS. I like to limit the refresh rate on my phone in the quick settings just to save a little bit of battery. I also tried Nobody Saves the World. It worked really nicely, but there was a weird bug where it thought I had a second controller plugged in. Okay, onto some Unity games, which I've actually had surprisingly good luck with. It seems like other people on other chips have trouble running Unity games. Untitled Goose Game ran just fine, 0 issues. I mean, it's not like being a goose is graphically demanding anyways. I also tried Ultra Kill. Boomer shooters are back, and I'm really, really glad they are. If you haven't played Ultra Kill, please do yourself a favor and go get it. This one also runs phenomenal on battery. It does have a few dips here and there, but it rarely goes under 60 FPS. It's genuinely so much fun. Neon White also runs awesome and never dips under 60, even on high settings. You can go higher if you set the phone to Diablo mode. You can start getting into the 100 plus frames, but I really don't think that's necessary. I was trying to play it with my backbone, but I noticed it felt a little clunky playing it this way. And then I remembered I have those haptic triggers on the back. So I made a quick little touch controller profile, and yeah, this is way better. This controls it really nicely with the extra triggers. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, my beloved. This one runs great, and it was also the first game I successfully managed to get running on Winlator, and it was just like a eureka moment for me. I had that Jet Set Radio Sega GT 2002 combo disc when I was a kid, so this really meant a lot to me. Skating around is no problem, easily consistent 60 frames. Only thing I will mention is once you get into the city, you do finally start hanging around the 40s, but hey, for a phone, I really can't complain. 30 FPS is still plenty. Okay, so now it's time to talk about cooling. That's going to be much more important from here on out. So even though the phone already has a tiny little cooling fan built in, these emulators are intense. It won't be enough, sadly. And your phone, as consequence, is going to get hot. Now, 2 things happen when your phone gets like 100% hot. Number 1, the battery starts to get worse. Like it's basically being cooked alive when left like this for an hour or 2 hours. But number 2, in an attempt to save itself, it'll begin throttling itself. Meaning you're not getting the best possible performance out of your phone anymore. And throttling could literally mean the difference between 40 frames and 60 frames. So what people tend to do is get little coolers for their phones. So they just go just snap right on the back of your phone and you're good to go. Any of them works, but a lot of them have varying levels of noise that I wasn't really happy with. Now, REDMAGIC made one, I found out. They didn't send me this. I bought this with my own money just to give it a shot since, REDMAGIC phone, REDMAGIC fan. And I don't know what they did to this thing, but this thing gets cold. Not like, oh, this keeps the phone like 2 degrees cooler. No. This feels like the back of a freezer. I left it plugged in because I forgot about it while I was charging my phone. I came back and this thing had condensation on it. Like actual water vapor came out of it. And sure enough, yeah, it kept my phone cool, and it was pretty quiet. You can barely tell that it's on. Only problem I found is, unfortunately, it doesn't work with my Backbone or any handheld controller, since, you know, there's like, it's like right smack in the middle there, unfortunately. So I found this thing in the market called the X3 Pro by GameSir, which seemed to solve both of my problems. It's a USB controller, and it has a cooling fan in the back. It even came in a really cute custom case too. Awesome. Okay, so it's the perfect solution, right? No, this thing is comically loud. And I thought, you know, maybe there's a setting on it that it's like full blast by default. Maybe it's my fault somehow, and maybe I could just turn it down or something. And no, this is the lowest setting for this thing. It can actually go higher. Yeah, you can't use this in public. Don't buy this. I'm kind of mad because I did, and it was like $80. But this one, yeah, you can use this one in public. Just don't get frostbite or anything. So my personal opinion here, the REDMAGIC one is the quietest and the most effective, and it kind of doubles as a stand too, so that's kind of neat. I'll leave a link in the description if you want. So from here on out, the rest of the games I'm going to be testing are going to be running with the fan in the back, because it's only going to get harder, not easier, to get these games running. But I promise you, you're really going to be impressed with the results. Okay, remember those keys I told you about on Amazon Prime? Yeah, this is why I mentioned it. BioShock Infinite is on there, and it is such a treat of a game if you never played it.
So they may better love the air.
Only thing I'd mention is two things. One, controllers are kind of forked for some reason. Everything is reversed, but you can kind of fix it by changing the joystick directions in the game's settings. And despite this game running on high settings, some parts of the game have comically low-res textures for no reason that I could figure out. God, this game is really pretty though. Definitely give it a shot if you haven't. I mean, it's literally free with Prime. Come on. I had to try a racing game. I remember when Need for Speed Rivals first came out, I thought this game was gorgeous.
Officer in need of immediate assistance on Grapevine Drive. All available units respond to this call.
I'm rolling on that 1030.
I also remember how incredibly frustrating the tutorials were.
Racers can cross the path
Oh my god, what is it with these tutorials,
to start a
dude?
pursuit, press the button.
It can run at high settings, no problem. This game launched with an internal frame rate cap of 30 FPS, so in this case, it's a matter of either it runs or it doesn't. And yeah, it runs. So now this is all great, but come on, none of this really matters unless we can answer the real question. Can it run? Yes, it can. And it looks pretty good too. It defaulted me to a weird mix of medium and high settings, but it still looks amazing regardless. Zero issues at all with this. Like, I really have no problems with this game at all. I did try to get Doom Eternal running, but I had no luck. So Doom 2016 it is. All right, let's start getting a little bit more serious now. Batman Arkham Knight.
What?
I think my phone just told me to go touch grass. The fact that this giant open world game runs this well on a phone is incredible. I mean, Jesus, look at this thing. It does get a little choppy when flying around the city, I won't lie, but normal regular combat and driving around, the frame rate is just fine. Also, it was at this moment where I realized that Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad played the voice of Commissioner Gordon in this game. Oh my god, dude, I really need to get around to playing this game already.
Any lead on Scarecrow?
We were tracking an unknown military vehicle speeding through Chinatown.
Keep it on low settings though, because otherwise the VRAM gets full and the whole game will just crash.
What?
But yeah, Batman can run in your pocket now.
Please, Batman, you've got to stop him. Don't worry, Jim. He's mine.
And of course, The Witcher 3. I wanted to test out the first chapter to see how it runs, and yeah, this is absolutely playable. Just last generation, we would be getting 20 to 30 frames in scenes like this, all at low settings. Now we're getting much better performance.
What did I tell you about?
Okay, so now what you've all been waiting for. Yeah, but can it run Crisis though? Can it run Crisis though? Oh my god, yes, okay, it runs Crisis. It runs it really, really well. But I want to talk about GTA already, so we're moving on. But yes, it does run. Okay, now what everyone's been waiting for. GTA 5. Okay, bear with me. This is kind of complex, and I'm essentially cramming down 2 weeks worth of work into a couple minutes. So no matter what I did, trying to launch this on Winlator would just insta-crash the app. Nothing seemed to work, and I tried genuinely everything I could think of. Basically, the versions of GTA that I was using weren't compatible at all with Winlator. But you know what is compatible with GTA? Yeah, you won't believe it. GameHub! Yeah, that really sketchy app that makes you share your location before hitting the play button. So real quick, here are my settings in case you want to copy them. Most notable here is the compatibility layer. See, I left this by default and I got it to run just fine at first, but then I noticed that after a few minutes, the game would just crash for no rhyme or reason.
No.
I later found out this is an anti-piracy measure, which, okay, before you say anything, I bought this game like 6 times now. Be nice, okay? But GTA 5 doesn't have an offline mode, so I had to resort to other ways of getting a hold of this game. I'm saving you the hours of trouble here and just showing you what finally fixed it for me. Click this and set it to Proton, specifically this version. That's what finally fixed it for me. And once I did that, the game ran beautifully. And wow, I expected like 15 FPS or something. This is insane. It's just, it's really weird to think we're finally here. Everything just works properly. The beginning mission had over 60 FPS, but that's not realistic for the whole game. Open world, you see more like 40-ish FPS on this phone. And remember, this is as good as it gets right now for phone chips. If you have anything that isn't a REDMAGIC Pro 10 or a Snapdragon chip, expect lower performance in this. And sometimes it will dip under 30 frames, but dude, I played this at like 25 FPS when it came out on my PS3. You'll live, I promise. Legit, you can't even tell this is being run locally on the phone. I will mention, I did try getting some mods running on here, but script hooks seem to just not work on here, even though we're running an older version of the game, so just no luck there. It took about 12 years, but we finally made it. It's not a meme or a scam anymore. We can finally play GTA on our phone. Although, don't be downloading any random Android APKs either. Come on, use common sense. Oh, we got GTA 5 on mobile before GTA 6. Yeah, I don't want to hear it anymore. Okay. So I think you're starting to get the idea here. I hope you're impressed with the performance. The fact that we're able to finally be at a point where we can run GTA 5 on a phone is just crazy. And here's the thing, it's only going to get better. Basically, up until now, all emulation on Snapdragon chips have been running on something called turnip drivers, which translates the PC graphics into phone graphics, something that your phone can understand. And at the time of recording this video, there is no turnip drivers for the Snapdragon 8 Elite, which means that games aren't running at their full potential. But we've been using the Vortex wrapper to be able to still run these games regardless. That's how you've seen all the tests that we've been doing. This is how I've been able to get these games running on this phone. This is the worst case scenario for how these games can actually run on this chip specifically. Okay, well, when are the turnip drivers coming? Odds are not for a while, maybe even years, honestly. The turnip community has already expressed that they're not really interested in making drivers for this chip, so it may take years, or it may never even come out. But there's another path forward, using the native drivers built into the phone's chip. And there's lots more support for people trying to move away from turnip drivers to using native drivers, as they're much more efficient and can often result in better performance. You can kind of already test it in Game Fusion, where it already has support for using native drivers with this phone. The main guy who makes Winlator already said he's not interested in pursuing support for native drivers. However, there are already other members in the community that are hard at work trying to get this thing running with its native drivers, which opens up a clear path towards better and more efficient emulation on Android. Which means when those versions of Winlator come out, we're gonna really be able to see what this thing is capable of. But for now, we're just gonna have to wait and see. But I hope it kind of makes it easier to understand what's going on in the scene right now, because that actually brings me to my next issue with the community. None of this information is laid out anywhere. While researching for this video, I discovered a gap in the PC emulation scene, because while most other modding communities already tend to have like an updated guide of the latest steps on how to get your modding thing set up, or like a wiki so you actually can learn what all the terms mean when people use, the PC emulation has nothing, literally nothing. There's no formal guide on how to get Winlator set up, or why there's 4 different versions, or what they each do. Video guides are borderline useless because the information gets outdated really fast, or it's just really low quality like this. Look at this. Sounds like he's printing a receipt. And there's a really bad trend of people just outright lying about their performance, which I thought was really, really strange. I don't know what would cause somebody to lie about their performance in a video. I don't get it. And a lot of the information is scattered across private discords or forums or Reddit threads with zero documentation of how they got there or the relevant terms or what they mean. Builds of Winlator are often abandoned, then forked, then re-abandoned, or uploaded onto sketchy Russian Discord servers, so you'd never be able to find the most recent release when Googling for it. While other modding communities have already managed to figure this out, where they have a bunch of different models of something, and you still have a way to present the information clearly, the PC emulation scene seems to not have that yet. The scene is a mess, and I think I think I can help with that. I think I want to tackle the idea of dumping all of my documentation of things that I learned while researching this video and putting it into a site or a wiki, something clear, something constantly updated and easy to share, kind of like vita.hacks.guide if you're familiar with that. Just a simple link you can send to a friend so they can get things up and running. But I can't do it alone. If you want to contribute your findings, let's share info together. If you have a phone that you know runs X game on Y Winlator with these settings, I just opened up a new forum page on my Discord. Come join, let's talk about it. Show me what you've discovered. Let's start pooling together our knowledge so we can make it easier for other people to follow along. I have a few threads in there already if you want to contribute. The idea is that this info will eventually be moved to a proper site so the information can live on and people don't have to join my Discord to be able to find this. I want to leave a net positive on the community, not just show it off and abandon it. So come check it out. Even if you're just a little interested in learning, I think we can do something really, really cool here. But yeah, I'm excited to see where PC games end up on Android. It feels really weird knowing those clickbait like, oh, play game, PC game on Android videos are now finally possible. Now we can play GTA and Crysis on something that can call your mom and fits in your pocket. I think that's an amazing achievement. I don't know where my camera's framed. Just click somewhere around here to check the next video. And thank you for watching.